Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum dear students. I am your teacher Simeen Amir and today I am here again with a new lecture. I hope everything is going well at your side. Let's start today's lecture. This is my lecture number 24 for grade Prio. And today we have a history class and we have already started with chapter number 6. The new topic is the Rowlatt Act that led to the India's anger. The British had offered concessions in the Montagu-Chelmsford reforms which they had hoped would win the support of Indian people. However, they had every intention of taking strong and effective action against any element in India which opposed British rule. In December 1917, a committee was formed under Justice Rowlatt to investigate revolutionary activities in India. So, the Revolutionary Crimes Act of 1919, which is popularly known as the Rowlatt Act, was a Legislative Council Act passed by the Imperial Legislative Council in Delhi on 18 March 1990. The purpose of Act was to curb the growing nationalism in the country. Mahatma Gandhi, among other Indian leaders, was extremely critical of the Act and argued that not everyone should be punished in response to isolated political crimes. The Act allowed certain political cases to be tried without juries and permitted internment of suspects without trial. It also allowed the British government the authority and the power to arrest people and keep them in prison for up to 2 years. The committee reported in April 1918 and it suggested that there was a definite growth of revolutionary activities in India, which should be dealt with as a matter of urgency. The committee recommended that some of the emergency measures of the Defence of India Act should be retained permanently. So the Rowlatt Act was actually the permanence of the Defence of India Act. Most controversial amongst these were like arrest without warrant. They can arrest anyone without taking warrant from the court. Detention without bail. Bail is zamanat. So like they were imprisoning them without any bail. The right of the provincial government to order people where to live. The proposals caused uproar in India as they appeared to go against two of the central principles of British justice, namely trial by jury and safeguards against illegal imprisonment. So Jinnah resigned from the Imperial Legislative Council, that was the highest legislative council in the British government, British Assembly, and Jinnah was the member who resigned as a protest. And Gandhi launched a hartal against the proposals. That was like a strike. Throughout April 1919, there were strikes and demonstrations across India, but the Viceroy ignored the opposition, accepted the recommendations, and the Rowlatt Act was passed in 1919. The Amritsar Massacre, or the Jallianwala Bagh Massacre. It took place on 13th April 1919 when acting Brigadier General Dyer ordered troops of the British Indian Army to fire their rifles into a crowd of unarmed, peaceful Indian civilians in Jallianwala Bagh, Amritsar, Punjab. They were unarmed people, they were peaceful, and they were all Sikh community who gathered in a Jallianwala Bagh to celebrate their annual Baisakhi festival. The strike and demonstrations caused the British to ban anti-government publications and to forbid public meetings. But these people, the Sikh community of this gathering, were unaware of any public meetings ban. Despite this, unrest continued, particularly in the Punjab area. Why it happened? Let me tell you about the background of the event. The Gandhi organized demonstrations and strikes across India to protest against the Rowlatt Act. It involved violence, though Gandhi wanted demonstrations to be peaceful. The two nationalist leaders, Dr. Satyapal and Dr. Kichlu, were deported without trial by British government. That led to a greatest violence at Amritsar, Punjab. On 10th April, rioting started in the city of Amritsar and two banks were attacked. 5 Europeans were also killed in the rioting. General Dyer, the British commander in the area, was determined to restore order. He banned all public meetings in the city and was angered when he saw that a Baisakhi festival was going on even after his order when he banned the public meetings. There were about 10 to 20,000 people turn up for a peaceful demonstration at a public park called Jallianwala Bagh in the Amritsar. The Dyer's troop were to deal with the crowd. They closed the single exit to the Bagh and General Dyer gave order to open fire on the unarmed people. The park had only narrow entrance and was surrounded by a 5-foot wall. General Dyer stationed his troops at the entrance and without warning fired on the unarmed crowd of men, women and children. The troops opened fire on the innocent people and they fired over 1,600 rounds. No one knows exactly how many people were killed in the Bagh. You can see on this wall the marks of the bullets. That was preserved by the Indian government. It was estimated that around 400 were killed, with a further 1,200 wounded or injured in a panic to try to flee the bullets from the park. After that massacre, there was a severe violence caused by the Indian people. General Dyer stated that he had fired on the crowd in the park to make sure that the people of the Punjab understood that they should obey British rule. Other measures soon followed. In Amritsar, men were flogged in public and made to crawl on hands and knees down a street where an Englishwoman had been attacked. A crowd meeting illegally at Gujranwala was bombed from the air, and the British also carried out numerous sentences of death, exile, or imprisonment to maintain order in Punjab. 15th April 1919, martial law was announced in Punjab. People faced humiliating punishments, for example, public beating. Around 50 to 100 students or lecturers of a college were to march to fort 3 miles away, imprisoned for 30 hours. Why? Just because an official notice on college wall was torn down. A special committee was made for the inquiry of the massacre, which was known as the Hunter Committee. It was set up in England to investigate what Dyer had done in Amritsar. As a result of its findings, Dyer was eventually removed from his active services, but he received no further punishment. In the eyes of many Europeans, he was a hero who had shown local troublemakers what would happen if they did not conform to British rule. Not surprisingly, the Indian people were highly insulted by the British failure to punish Dyer. It was one of the reasons why Gandhi now stated that cooperation in any shape or form with the satanic government is sinful. Satanic government means the Shaitani government. So the British and Indian relationship was permanently damaged, and the nationalist movements were grew amongst the Indian people. Far more people now wanted the end of this British rule. The British official Winston Churchill said it is an extraordinary event, a monstrous event, an event which stands in singular and sinister isolation. I was confronted, says General Dyer, by a revolutionary army. What is the chief characteristics of an army? Surely it is that it is armed. This crowd was unarmed. The non-cooperation movement was started by Mahatma Gandhi in March 1920. It was launched to convince the British government of India to grant self-government or Swaraj to India. It was called for the reasons of Jallianwala Bagh massacre and the resultant Punjab disturbance after the massacre. It was also the result of the dissatisfaction with Montagu Chelmsford reforms and because of the permanence of the Rowlatt Act. It was started against the British Empire for killing several hundred Indians pitilessly at Jallianwala Bagh and from later indignation at the government's alleged failure to take adequate action against those responsible, like General Dyer, who were not given any further punishment. The movement was to consist of the resignations of titles, the boycott of government educational institutions, the courts, government service, foreign goods, and elections, and the eventual refusal of pay taxes. Many Indians had lost faith in the British rulers and joined Gandhi's non cooperation movement with great enthusiasm. British cloth were burned in huge amounts and the production of hand-spun and hand-woven Indian cloth was encouraged. Teachers and students left English colleges and schools and then set up their own institutions. Many lawyers gave up their practices as part of boycott of the English legal system. The first election of the Reformed Council in 1920, that was followed by the Montagu-Chelmsford reforms, were largely ignored by Congress, and Congress refused to field their own candidates. In response to this widespread opposition, the British began a policy of imprisonment to the accused troublemakers. Soon the jails were filled with over 30,000 political prisoners. It seemed that non-cooperation was providing a very difficult situation for the British government. But as non-cooperation split over into violence, Gandhi decided to call off the campaign in February 1922 because an angry mob killed a British officer by lighting a police station on fire in Chori Chora incident. Also, the mob burned down the police station, killing 23 police officers. After this incident, Gandhiji himself called off the movement. This is what you will read in the next chapter in the Khilafat movement. The first non-cooperation campaign had failed to bring about Swaraj. Swaraj means self-rule, self-government. So they were failed to bring about Swaraj or self-rule and had also failed to save the Khalifa, which you will learn in the next chapter in the Khilafat movement. But it had, however, played an important part in raising Indians' expectations and convincing many people of the need to work to overthrow the British rulers. It was a weapon which Gandhi was to use several more times against the British government. Post-war events in India had brought Hindus and Muslims closer together in their opposition to British repression and in an attempt to save the Khalifa in Turkey. When British gone in war against Germany and its allied countries in the World War, so Muslims of the Indias in India was concerned about the to save the Khalifa in Turkey. In the early 1920s, however, there was an increase in suspicion and rivalry between the two groups. The ending of non cooperation did not bring peace to India. Instead, it led to serious communal rioting across India. This was a period when Hindu fundamentalism gained more influence in India. Arya Samaj had been founded in 1877 and had strongholds in western and northern India. It aimed to purify Hinduism of some of the impure practices into which it had fallen. By doing so, its founder Dayadan Saraswati hoped to reconvert Hindus who had been converted to Christianity. During the 1920s, Arya Samaj was a powerful agent for the spreading of education and social reforms, particularly in Punjab. Together with the Hindu Mahasabha, Arya Samaj carried out militant activities in 1924 which helped strain relationship between Hindus and Muslims. Pandit Madan Mohan Malaviya was an Indian scholar, educational reformer, and politician notable for his role in the Indian independence movement. He was also the four times president of Indian National Congress. In Punjab, Hindu sabhas or Hindu political parties had been involved in local politics since the 1890s. 1923, the Uttar Pradesh Congressman Pandit Mohan Malaviya brought a number of them together in a political party, the Hindu Mahasabha. That was his political party. It contested its first election in 1926. The party made little progress, however, until the charismatic V.D. Savarkar became president in 1947. The Hindu Mahasabha was to condemn the partition settlement as a national disaster since it wanted India to be a Hindu state. They were against the partition of India and Pakistan. It believed that Gandhi's religious tolerance was a threat to Hindu purity. Savarkar was later accused of being involved in the assassination of Gandhi or the murder of the Gandhi in January 1948, though he would be acquitted by the court. The Hindu Congress Party was split in the early 1920s. Although the party officially opposed the election for the councils in 1920, a splinter group or the splinter like when it was divided in other groups, so the divided groups stood in the elections and won some seats under the name of National Liberals. But these members and those of the other parties who had fielded candidates soon found that they had little influence on the British. In 1923, Congress decided to adopt a new policy. Now was the time to enter the councils and carry out a policy of consistent obstructions with a view to making government impossible. The 1923 elections were fought under the name of the Swaraj Party. Sava means own, self, and Raj means government. So it's self government, or we can say self rule. So they named their party under the name of Swaraj Party, and a large number of seats were won against this manifesto. The growth of Congress influence worried the Muslim League, which feared that the Congress was more concerned with Hindu matters than winning rights of all Indians. The League's suspicion was further increased when Congress refused to support Muslim demand for full provincial autonomy. Autonomy means self-government. To make matters even worse, Hindu group began carrying out forcible conversion of Muslims. It was time for League to fight back. Tension between the Hindus and the Muslims was on the rise from 1922 onwards. The Qaid, seeing that the Hindus had no inclination to cooperate with the Muslims, invited the Muslim leaders of India to meet at Delhi under his presidency. This meeting was held on the 20th of March 1927, and the result was the Delhi Muslim proposals. which were unanimously accepted by the by all the Muslim leaders. The demands of the proposals were as follow: like Muslims should be given one third of the seats in the central legislative through joint electorates. Sindh should be given full provincial status. Before that, it was a part of Bombay. So, as Muslims were in majority in the part of Sindh, so they were asking for the full provincial autonomy for the province of Sindh. All British reforms in India should be extended to Balochistan and the NWFP also, because in NWFP and Balochistan, Muslims were in majority. The number of seats to be given to the Muslims in the Punjab and Bengal should be proportional to the Muslims population living there, because Muslims were in majority in these in these provinces. That's why Jinnah asked for the to proportionate them according to the number of the Muslims living there. Jinnah stated that if these proposals were accepted, the Muslims would call off their demands for a separate electorates. As we are done with the chapter, so here is your assignment. Only one question, but the lengthy one. Of all the events in the period 1911 to 1919, was the Amritsar massacre the one that had the greatest impact on the relations between the British and the Indian people? Give reasons for your answer. Now you have to concern, like to have to keep the time frame in your mind, like from 1911 to 1919. You have to keep in mind all the events that happened from 1911 to 1919. Now that you have to justify, or you are that you are agreed or not with the Amritsar massacre that had the greatest impact on the relationship, on the bad relationship between the British and the Indian people. So, and you have to give your reasons to support your answer. In the end, you have to give the conclusion as well. This is your answer. This is your assignment. Do this assignment in your notebook, and please make sure that it should be like in the length of 2 pages at least. Thank you, dear students, for watching this video. I hope this chapter will be clear now. If still you have any confusion or queries, you can drop down your queries in the comment box. And we'll meet up again, inshallah, after winter vacations. Please stay at home. Do enjoy your vacations. Do enjoy the New Year night, but still you have to be at home for a precautionary measures. Okay? So please stay at home, and we'll meet up again after vacations. Till then, Allah Hafiz.